Good morning, everyone. This is PA in the AM coming to you from Carlsbad, California, and it's Friday. So today is the beginning of a holiday weekend. So I just wanted to discuss with you a topic that's really important to me, and that's snoring. So I've been a physician assistant for the last 9 years, and I work primarily in pediatric head and neck surgery, ear, nose, and throat, ENT. Also, I wanted to discuss our favorites Friday, so I'm going to cover a couple of my favorite things at the end of the episode, so tune in for that. So snoring is a very annoying thing to parents, especially, and wives and some husbands, and so I just want to address that today. And primarily in children, snoring is due to the enlarged tonsils and the adenoid, which is the third tonsil that sits in the back of the nose. You can't see the adenoid by looking directly into the nose because it's so far back there. But oftentimes, if you get an x-ray of the side view of the head, you can see a big tonsil enlarged in the back of the nose. Symptoms for children that have snoring, it usually is noisy breathing, and another type of diagnosis could be something called either sleep disordered breathing or obstructive sleep apnea, and those are usually used sleep interchangeably. So if a child isn't getting a good night's sleep, or if you're hearing snoring from your child and you actually hear pauses or gasping for air at night, that is not normal, so they're probably not getting good oxygen at night when they're asleep. So a lot of the kind of red flag symptoms to look for are if they are having daytime fatigue when they get up in the morning, they're having fitful sleep where they're moving all over the bed at night, daytime hyperactivity, and sometimes even bedwetting in older kids as well. If they're 5 and older, that's not normal for them to be bedwetting most nights of the week, so just keep that in mind. The difficulty concentrating at school or having trouble with their memory could also be kind of a red flag that they're not getting a good night's sleep. Headaches in the morning, mood changes, and so if any of your kids have any of these symptoms, take a little bit closer look at their sleep at night. Another thing to consider is something called a sleep study, and the sleep study would entail you with your child spending one night in the sleep center, and they hook the child up to a brain monitor, a heart monitor, and an oxygen saturation monitor to see if their oxygen levels are dropping at night. And if their oxygen levels get below 90%, that is not normal. And they also look at what's called an AHI, an apnea, hypopnea index, and that's the amount of apneas or pauses in breathing they're having per hour. If they have more than 15 per hour, that's considered moderate obstructive sleep apnea. More than 20 is more severe. And so if they end up getting that sleep study and it does show a mild sleep apnea, that doesn't necessarily mean that they need surgery. Some children can have allergy symptoms, and so the initial treatment is usually to help with alleviating any congestion in the nose. So in particular, I would usually recommend Flonase or fluticasone, and I'll put a link down below. This is actually one of my favorite things I wanted to discuss today. So Flonase is a nasal topical steroid spray. And the way that the nasal steroid spray works is that you do 1 spray per nostril for kids under 12. So it just makes like a fine mist. And you squirt it straight back this way. And you just do 2 sprays in each nostril for adults or kids 12 and older. And again, that's at night before bed, and then just have them brush their teeth afterwards. I always tell the parents to put it next to the toothbrush so they remember every night before they go to bed, they just do the sprays in each nostril, and then they won't forget. And then the way the nasal spray works is that it doesn't become effective until you do it every single day for at least a week. So if you wanted to try it first and then start to observe their sleep, I'd recommend at least waiting 1 to 2 weeks prior to starting the nasal spray. After starting the nasal spray in order to start observing their sleep at night. The best time to observe their sleep at night is 2 hours before they wake up in the morning. So just peek out on them maybe on a weekend and see if they're actually having any of those pauses or gasping at night. And if they are, or if you're still unsure, then you can go down the sleep study route or ask your primary care provider to refer you to see an ENT or pediatric ENT. So if they are having significant sleep apnea symptoms, the next step is to consider taking out the tonsils and or the adenoids. So that's usually a curative treatment for children. and I'll go over adults in a minute. But the procedure for taking out the tonsils and or the adenoids is usually about 30 to 40 minutes in the operating room, and it is outpatient for children that are over the age of 3, and if they're typically developing. So if they don't have any developmental delays, then they could likely go home the same day after the surgery. But if they're under the age of 3, and if they have autism, Down syndrome, or any behavior issues at all, or if they just wake up from anesthesia and are kind of combative and not tolerating fluids, then we would keep them overnight for observation and for IV hydration. The procedure is done in a surgical setting. So once the anesthesiologist takes the patient back and they say bye to you, they go to sleep with a mask. And then once they're asleep, they put a breathing tube in for them to breathe. And they remove the tonsils and the adenoid through the mouth. And after they wake up, in our hospital, it's a popsicle room. And they usually go home shortly afterwards. Once they're able to drink and eat a popsicle, they're fine to go home. And again, if they keep them overnight, it's usually just one night, and that's to monitor their oxygen and make sure they're well hydrated. So there are risks for surgery, of course, and the main risk for taking the tonsils out especially is bleeding. In our hospital, it's about 1 to 3% chance of bleeding. If your child were to have a tonsil bleed after surgery, it usually happens 7 to 10 days after the surgery. They would either cough up blood or they would vomit and you'd see blood, and that's not normal. So you would have to go to the emergency room, and that's for us to monitor them and see if there's any active bleeding. And if there is still active bleeding, again, rarely we have to go back to the operating room, and the surgeon would cauterize the back of the throat to help stop the bleeding. Another risk, of course, is dehydration. So lots of kids do not want to swallow after the surgery. So lots of juices, popsicles, ice cream to help with the recovery. And then the pain usually lasts about a week. So we usually recommend about a week out of school, but it could last for up to 2 weeks. So just keep that in mind when you're scheduling travel plans and things. It is contraindicated to travel during that 2-week time period after the surgery because of the risk of bleeding. So other than that, so I just wanted to mention about removing the adenoids. They could actually cause more nasal obstruction and really bad breath for up to 2 weeks after the surgery, while that pad in the back of the throat is healing, but then that will all go away. And so I would say about 6 weeks post-operatively, if your child is still having sleep apnea, which is possible, especially in the obese children or children with, Down syndrome or other developmental delays, then we would need to get a sleep study. And so that would make sure whether or not they would need something called a CPAP, and I'll go over that in a minute when we talk about adults. So that's mainly for kids. So the main treatment is usually we take out the tonsils, adenoids, and we don't see them back because they're back to normal. So as far as adults with sleep apnea, one of the main causes is from obesity, and that's because there's a lot of extra skin around the neck, and there's fat tissue that is around the back of the nose and the throat that can compress the airway and kind of close things off when people are asleep at night. So there are a lot of different devices that are out there right now, and the main non-surgical treatments, like I mentioned, is a CPAP. And what a CPAP is that continuous positive airway pressure. So it's a little mask that goes over the nose, and that's to try to keep any tissue from collapsing in when you're asleep. So that could just cause air to hold everything open. Another thing is called a mandibular advancement device. Treatment called a pillar implant surgery. What they do is they're cylindrical implants that help stiffen the palate to treat snoring. And so 4 or 5 of these little cylindrical implants are placed into the palate, and so it just helps keep it stiff while you're sleeping. And again, that's mainly for helping with snoring, not necessarily obstructive sleep apnea, so it makes people quieter when they're asleep. When you see your primary care doctor, if you have any concerns at all with any of those red flag symptoms like we talked about, consider getting a sleep study and or trying the Flonase like we talked about, 1 spray per nostril at night before bed for kids under the age of 12, and 2 sprays per nostril at night before bed for 12 and older. And if that does improve your symptoms, then going down the allergy route might be the next best step for you, where you would be tested for allergies, whether with an allergist with a skin test or getting a blood test. And so that tests for the most common environmental allergens like dust mites, grasses, ragweed, pollen, pet dander, and a few other things. And so once you figure out what you're allergic to, then you could kind of change your environment more effectively. So if you have a dust mite allergy, there's special in cases you can get for the pillow and for the mattress that's zip closed. So every time you hop into bed, the dust doesn't really sit into the air and causes you more nasal obstruction. And then, there's different things to do for mold allergy, pet dander allergy. So if you have any questions or comments about anything I went over, I know that was a lot of information, go ahead and drop them below under comments. And so since it's Favorites Friday, again, I already went over one of my first favorite things, that's Flonase or fluticasone. I'll put the link below, but it's over the counter now. This used to be Nasonex. So my other favorite thing I wanted to talk about was the Redefine Eye Cream. And this is for the morning and for the evening. It's recommended to all rodent and field regimens. This nourishing eye cream utilizes powerful peptides to minimize the look of fine lines and wrinkles while also promoting a firmer, more youthful looking eye area. So I use it in the morning and at night before I go to bed, and you could feel it working. It kind of makes like a sensation, like you can feel it kind of tightening when you're wearing it. And I really have noticed a little bit of less puffiness underneath my eyes. And I only use it a couple days a week, but even though it looks small, it lasts months and months. So hopefully you can get a hold of that and see if you notice a difference with that. And again, I'm going to put the link to my favorite things down below. Tune in next Wednesday at 6 a.m. live on Instagram at PA in the AM. I wanted to discuss ear infections next week. And so I will discuss that with children on Wednesday, and then on Friday I'll have another YouTube channel but goes into more depth with ear infections in adults as well. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday weekend. Take care.